The moment my son's hands slid beneath the towel, tracing the curve of my hip, I knew I had crossed a line that would scorch my soul. Lust coiled low in my stomach, thick and undeniable, as his fingertips grazed the edge of forbidden territory. This was no accident. This was a collision of hunger and shame, and I let it consume me. Hello, beautiful souls. This is Barbara, and before we begin, I want to thank each of you, new viewers and loyal subscribers, for being here. Your support fuels this channel, and I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Your thoughts in the comments mean the world to me. Now, let me unravel the story that shattered my life. It started innocently, or so I told myself. Mark, my 22-year-old son, had always been charismatic. Too charismatic. After my husband, Greg, relocated for work, loneliness gnawed at me. Mark noticed. He began visiting more often, bringing wine, lingering in conversations. His compliments felt warm, then heavy, then dangerous. When he offered to massage my stiff shoulders one evening, I said yes. The first massage had been a flicker of danger. The second was an inferno. Mark's palms pressed into the knots of my shoulders, his thumbs skimming the edge of my bra strap. I told myself it was innocent until his breath hitched, warm against my ear. "You are tense everywhere," he murmured, his voice rougher than I had ever heard it. His hands drifted lower, kneading the small of my back, slipping beneath the waistband of my leggings. I froze, pulse roaring, as his fingers brushed the swell of my ass. A sound escaped me, half protest, half plea, and he took it as permission. When he flipped me over on the table, the towel slipped. His gaze raked over my naked body, lingering shamelessly. I should have covered myself. I should have screamed. Instead, I watched, hypnotized, as he unbuckled his jeans. His arousal was obvious, straining against fabric, and a traitorous heat pooled between my thighs. "Do not think," he whispered, climbing onto the table. "Just feel." His mouth crashed onto mine, demanding, possessive, as his hips settled against me. The world dissolved into sensation. The grind of his body, the bite of his teeth on my neck, the slick, aching friction as he took what he wanted and what I had foolishly let him claim. We never spoke of it. Not when it happened again in my bedroom. Not when he started staying overnight. Shame glued my tongue, but desire melted my spine. I was 50, clinging to fading youth. He was 22, thriving on rebellion. Then came the massage table. Mark had bought a professional setup, insisting it would ease my stress. The room smelled of lavender oil and deceit. As I lay face down, he pressed play on a playlist of sultry jazz. His hands trailed lower than usual, his breath hotter. Panic and thrill dueled inside me. "Relax, Barbara," he murmured. "Not Mom." The tool, a vibrating massager, slid between my thighs. I gasped. He laughed softly, activating it remotely via an app one did not know existed. Humiliation burned as pleasure betrayed me. Later, I would learn he had recorded everything. But in that moment, I realized this was never about me. It was about power. Guilt is a quiet poison. It seeped into my bones, staining every glance, every breath, after that night on the massage table. Mark's laughter lingered in my mind. A sound that once comforted me now felt like a blade. I told myself it would stop. It did not. He began arriving unannounced, his presence a storm I could not weather. His excuses were seamless. "I forgot my jacket here. I thought you might need company." His hands always found a reason to graze my hips, his lips brushing my ear as he whispered, "You know you want this." I did not. Or I convinced myself I did not. The line between need and shame had dissolved. When I tried to pull away, his eyes turned cold. He would remind me, without words, of the power he held. Once, he left his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. I saw it, a folder labeled B, filled with videos I did not dare open. My body went numb. Later, I would vomit in the bathroom, scrubbing my skin raw as if it might erase the truth. He started asking for money. Small amounts at first, gas cash, a loan for groceries. Then larger sums. A friend's emergency. A debt. When I refused, he smirked. Greg would find the videos fascinating, don't you think? He never said it outright. He did not need to. I began noticing patterns. Late-night calls he took in hushed tones. Perfume on his collar that was not mine. One afternoon, I found a receipt in his coat pocket, a hotel room rented weeks prior, when he had claimed to be studying. The dates matched a weekend Greg had visited. My blood turned to ice. The final thread snapped on a Thursday. Mark left his laptop open, a chat window glowing. Messages to a woman named Lana. She's pathetic. Just a means to an end. My face blurred on the screen beside them, a paused video, my bare back arched in pleasure. I confronted him that night, my voice trembling. He did not deny it. He leaned against the doorframe, grinning. You think you're the first? He said. You're just the easiest. In that moment, I saw my son for what he was, a stranger wearing a predator's smile. Regret tastes like battery acid. It coats the tongue, eats through resolve. By the time I discovered Mark's recordings, I was already drowning. The app was called Silent Pulse, a sleek, innocuous icon buried in his phone's utilities folder. He had synced the vibrating massager to it, turning intimacy into a scripted performance. But the true horror lay in the cloud storage linked to the tool. Hours of footage. Us in the living room, the bedroom, the massage table. All time-stamped, all saved under a password I could not crack. I waited until Mark was asleep to steal his phone. My hands shook as I scrolled. There were clips of other women too, Lana, a redhead from his college, a waitress at the diner he frequented. Each video labeled with initials, dates, locations. My stomach twisted. He had done this before. He would do it again. When I confronted him, he did not flinch. He leaned back on the couch, smirking, as I hurled accusations. You think deleting them will fix anything? He said. They're backed up in 6 different places. You are not the first to try. His calmness terrified me. He demanded $50,000. A severance package, he called it, to protect my reputation. When I refused, he sent a 15-second clip to Greg's work email. Just enough to make my husband call, confused, asking why Mark's number appeared in the metadata. I transferred the money, but Mark was not finished. He began showing up at my book club, my yoga studio, smiling at my friends with that serpent's grin. Barbara's been so stressed lately, he would say. We've been spending extra time together. The subtext hung like a blade. One night, he texted me a photo, a positive pregnancy test from Lana. Guess who's going to be a grandma? He wrote. Unless you wire another $25,000 by dawn. I stared at the screen, tears blurring the words. This was my son, the child I rocked to sleep, bandaged scraped knees for, loved fiercely. Now he was a puppeteer and I dangled from his strings. I dug out Greg's old revolver from the attic. It weighed less than my shame. The revolver's grip felt like a lifeline, cold and unyielding, as I paced the living room. Moonlight sliced through the blinds, painting bars of shadow across the floor. Mark would arrive soon. He had texted an hour earlier. Last chance, Barbara. Wire the money, or Greg gets the full video. I did not wire the money. His key turned in the lock at midnight. He strode in, smelling of whiskey and arrogance, his smile sharp enough to draw blood. Where's my cash? He said, tossing his jacket onto the couch. I leveled the gun at him. My hand did not shake. He laughed. You think that scares me? You are not a killer. You have ruined me, I said. Delete the videos. All of them. He stepped closer, unfazed. Or what? You will shoot your own son? His voice dripped mock pity. Poor Barbara. Always the victim. The words ignited something feral in me. I cocked the hammer. I brought you into this world. I can take you out. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. He raised his hands, slow and theatrical. Fine. Let's talk. The pregnancy test, I said. Lana's child. Is it yours? He smirked. Does it matter? You will pay either way. The click of the front door interrupted us. Greg stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand, face slack with jet-lagged confusion. His gaze darted between the gun, Mark's raised hands, my tear-streaked face. What the hell is going on? Mark seized the moment. Dad. She's lost it. She threatened to shoot me. He is lying, I choked out. Greg, We. Mark lunged for the gun. The struggle was a blur of grunts and clawing hands. Greg shouted, dropping his suitcase. The revolver clattered to the floor, discharging a deafening shot into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. Greg froze, staring at me. We? Mark scrambled for the gun, but Greg grabbed his arm, wrenching him backward. Explain now. Silence thickened the air. Mark laughed, low and venomous. Tell him, Barbara. Tell him how you moaned when I... Greg's fist connected with Mark's jaw. They crashed into the coffee table, shattering glass. Greg pinned him, roaring. You sick bastard. You're my son. Mark spat blood, grinning. And she's your wife. Ask her who started it. Greg turned to me, his eyes shattered. Is it true? The words would not come. My nod was barely perceptible. Greg released Mark, stumbling back as he burned. He gripped his wedding ring, heaving breaths. How long? Months, Mark said, rising. She could not get enough. But do not worry, I have videos. Wanna watch? Greg's face contorted. He snatched the revolver, aiming it at Mark. Get out. Now. Mark wiped his mouth, still smirking. This is not over. The door slammed. Greg lowered the gun, shoulders shaking. When he looked at me, it was with a hatred that scalded my soul. You disgust me. He left without another word. I collapsed amidst the wreckage, the taste of copper and regret on my tongue. The silence after Greg left was louder than any scream. I sat on the floor for hours, surrounded by shards of glass and the ghosts of choices I could not undo. By morning, the news had spread. Greg filed for divorce immediately. His lawyer sent papers in a crisp envelope, along with a restraining order forbidding me from contacting him. The settlement favored him entirely. The house, the savings, the life we had built. I did not fight it. Guilt had hollowed me into a shell, willing to accept punishment. But the public unraveling was worse. Mark leaked a snippet of the video to a community forum. It went viral within hours. My face, pixelated but recognizable, flooded social media. Suburban mom and incest scandal screamed the headlines. Friends blocked my number. My book club disbanded. Strangers spat at me in grocery stores. The gym where I once found peace canceled my membership. I became a ghost in my own town, haunting aisles of pity and disgust. Mark reveled in it. He sold the full video to a fetish site, pocketing enough to flee the state. But karma, it seemed, was not idle. Weeks later, Lana came forward. The pregnancy test was fake, a ploy to extort him. She exposed Mark's recordings of their encounters, and others followed. Waitresses, classmates, women who had been too afraid to speak. A police warrant was issued. His face joined mine on the news, this time labeled predator. I found him one rainy night, hiding in a motel off Route 10. He answered the door gaunt, eyes bloodshot. For a moment, I saw the boy who once loved Legos and fireflies. Then he sneered. Come to gloat? I came to ask why, I whispered. He lit a cigarette, blowing smoke in my face. Because I could. Because you let me. I left without another word. The final blow came in court. Greg's divorce was granted swiftly, but Mark's trial dragged me into the spotlight again. I testified, my voice mechanical, as the jury watched clips of my own shame. Mark was sentenced to 8 years. He glared at me as they cuffed him, hissing, "You did this." But the truth was, we did it to each other. Now I live in a rented studio, working graveyard shifts at a diner no one I know frequents. The nightmares are constant. Mark's laugh, Greg's shattered eyes, the gunshot that split our lives in two. Some days, I stare at the revolver still tucked in my nightstand, wondering if I will ever be brave enough to use it. Yet here I am, still breathing, still aching, still telling this story. Perhaps that is punishment enough. To my beautiful viewers, this journey has been agonizing to share, but your support has been my lifeline. If this story moved you, please let me know in the comments. Your words heal wounds I cannot name. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Every click fuels my courage to keep going. Thank you, from the depths of my fractured heart, for bearing witness. This is Barbara, signing off for now.